Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Wide Open. I am your host, Ashlyn Harris, and our guest today is one of my favorite humans ever, Samantha Barry. Welcome to Wide Open.
Love this. Love the setup.
It's
this is
so
very
chic,
exciting.
right?
Yeah.
I actually told the team, I was like, wait till you see her walk in. She's going to be dressed to the nines, head to toe, so put together. You're so chic. I'm obsessed with you.
This is one of the days that I just wanted to be like literally in a onesie. Getting out of bed.
Me too. I was so stressed picking out. Listen, I do not get stressed about wardrobe.
Yeah.
Today I was stressed.
No, stop.
I swear I was stressed. So for those of you who don't know, Samantha, I call her Sam, is the global editorial, I don't want to get this wrong, director for Glamour, which is a new role.
It's a new role.
Because you've been working for Glamour now since 2018, right?
2018, and that was, I came in as editor-in-chief of Glamour in the US. And this role, which is really exciting, is all of Glamour's. So we've Glamour Mexico, UK, Spain, Germany, and, you know, working on global Glamour, basically.
You know, I have to say, what you've done with Glamour and how you've merged this beautiful gap of feminism and like politics. It's everything you're about, which I love. It's a totally different vibe and platform now, which I want to dive so deep into. But first, I want to talk about like Sam in Ireland growing up as a kid. Why journalism? Why did you choose, which we'll dive into, because your path to get to this point has been quite incredible, but seems like far out, that you would go from working at the BBC, then to CNN. You were heavily in politics and policy, and you were covering the 2016 election. And then you were like, hey, fuck it, I'm going to go be the editor-in-chief of Glamour. Like, hello, that is absolutely insane and incredible all at the same time. But like, what got you there? Like, what's the origin story?
It's so interesting because I think about this a lot, like sitting here in New York, doing a job that I absolutely love with a life that I definitely couldn't have imagined. Like, I grew up in Ireland in the 80s, which was, you know, it's a little depressing, I would say, if you had to describe it. I grew up in a council house, like social housing in Ireland, with a family that was extremely supportive, and I would say teachers and an education system that really helped me. And I think about that a lot. Even in the US, I think about the people coming in and out of college. Like, I went to there was something about Ireland in the 80s that was a very equal opportunity place, especially no matter where you are in the socioeconomic world, you got a really good education. And I still am really close with my teachers from primary school and secondary school. And I think part of the reason why I'm in the job that I am now, I loved to learn. Also, I love the news. Like, Ireland is such a place that over-indexes, like, we're storytellers. Like, I love seeing all the Irish people, like, you know, in Gladiator or on Bad Sisters, or like, but just the reality is, like, if you grow up in Ireland, like, storytelling is the biggest currency that you can have, whether that is like in the pub or at home.
Oh, the pub.
Yeah. Like, it's, so I think it's just like, it's definitely in who we are and the world that we grew up in. And for me, that storytelling was always around the world of news and information. And I was so fascinated with, I would get up in the morning and listen to radio news, and we always had newspapers in the house, and everybody sat down and watched the 6 o'clock news, and I knew who the anchors were. I knew who the female journalists were. When I was growing up, we had an amazing journalist called Veronica Guerin who did a lot of crime reporting. There was a movie made about her, actually. The anchor at 6 o'clock in the evening was a woman. And so it was very progressive, and I never thought there wasn't a journalism job I couldn't do, I think. And I think that with a really supportive family and a great education system meant that I just didn't, I absolutely thought beyond the confines of like Ballincollig, this tiny little village that I grew up in.
Now, what age were you when you were like, oh, I actually really enjoy this, I think this is what I want to do? Were you in primary school? Like, what was that aha moment where you said, okay, clearly representation matters. And I say that all the time. And you were lucky enough to be able to see women in very successul positions.
Yeah. And the
Female
president of Ireland was a woman, Mary Robinson, who's like iconic
Queen.
to me. Yeah.
But like because we don't, still we don't have that. So I find that in the U.S. so many times, especially I sit down with a lot of news journalists, anchors, multimedia platforms, and they're just so destroyed in the profession, and they're sexualized, and there's so many injustices in it because of clearly how we operate in the U.S. and our culture. It's great to hear that was never a problem for you. That was never a challenge where you were told you can't do this. Like women like you don't get these type of opportunities.
I mean, there was definitely moments, I think, when I started in, and again, you kind of push up against it. Well, I remember starting, I did a degree in English and a master's in journalism. And I started working in RTE, which is like the national broadcaster. And I started on overnights, which I will highly recommend anybody starting a new job or trying to do a new profession, like do those ungodly hours, because you can make all of the mistakes. Like I was doing the news at like 3:00 in the morning for like 4 truckers, and I was mispronouncing everybody's name. And I was doing it wrong. But, I was doing those unsociable hours and learning the craft a little bit. But then on the daytime, they did put me on the, like, I'd say fluffier stories, right? Because I was the young, like maybe one of the younger women in the newsroom, where it's like I would get to do the science fair with the kids, or I knew that was part of the course, but I also knew when it was time for me to move on, because I didn't want to do those stories anymore. So you definitely, there's definitely moments that you come up against it. I don't know, sometimes I will say this, sometimes I think, and I say this about taking on the job at Glamour, I say this about taking on the job at CNN, which I really didn't know what I was taking on at the time, and some of the like foreign assignments that I took on, often a little bit of delusion and not thinking too much about it can go a long way. Like just jumping into things. I don't overthink things. Then when I'm in it, I'm like, oh God, can I do this? But like, I think that's got me a long way, where it's like, why couldn't I do it? Let's try it, right? I think sometimes we can be our worst enemy. I'm like, I'm not going to try something or do something different. I'm just like, let's give it a go.
Yeah,
like, why not?
I find that I'm more complex as I get older. I agree. When I was young, I was so bullish, and I was just like, oh, I can do anything.
Yeah.
I don't listen to what anyone says.
Yeah.
I have an ego the size of this room.
Yeah. I think we should hold on to that a little bit.
It probably made me a really great soccer player.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I'm going to use an analogy. My sister's skiing with her 3 kids now, and they're in Sweden. And she learned how to ski as an adult. And her kids have been on skis since they were 8 years of age. They are fearless on that ski slope. She learned in her 30s, and she's, on the bunny stuff. I think holding on to some of that like childhood, attitude of why not? And why can't I be in this room? And why can't I do this job? Is a good thing to have.
And tell me about, first off, your sisters are amazing.
Oh,
During the holidays, I was seeing the videos with you and your nieces and nephews. First off, so yummy.
Yeah, they're so cute.
You walking up for the viewers and listeners out there, I'm just going to put it in context. You showed up in Sweden in a Santa costume.
Yeah, they didn't know I was coming. I've got Auntie Sam surprises down, and I was like, well, how are we going? I've surprised them a couple of times, and they were so sure I wasn't coming this Christmas because my parents were in New York with me. So on Christmas Day, I was FaceTiming my niece and nephews in Sweden, and they were so sure I wasn't coming. I got on a plane on the 26th, and I landed. My sister put me in a Santa suit, and I came through the back garden, and it was my shoes that gave me away. Yeah. But yeah, I love those kids. I love being an aunt. I think it's like so. I have another niece who was here as well over Christmas who lives in Ireland. It's such a gift to be an aunt. Like,
I also think you and your upbringing and being from Ireland, like you, and I say this all the time to my friends. I say this all the time to Sophia, and we laugh about it because a lot of people in the fashion world who have and hold the jobs you do at such a high level are so stoic. They like move like a robot and they don't really show emotion. And what I love about you is you're so real and you're so fun and everything. Like, of course, you're incredible at your job. I mean, you wouldn't be in the position you're at now without being absolutely exceptional. But like, you have a personality and it's fun and it's infectious, and it's I imagine through your work of storytelling, it's probably so important to hold on to those roots from Ireland, how you were raised. Do you feel that as you continue this path of being incredible at what you do and storytelling and writing people's very vulnerable personal moments in their life? Like, I imagine that part of that is what makes you so wonderful.
I feel very lucky every day. Like I, you talk about growing up. If somebody told me, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old me that I'd be doing this job, I would just I wouldn't believe it. So like, I remember moving to New York and I worked at CNN at the time, and I had gone from being a producer of television news at the BBC and came to CNN to take on a role which was like running social media and running a team and running a bigger team than I'd ever imagined. And I met an Irish friend, and this was before I was at Glamour, and I was getting to do like really fun like fly to Vegas for a debate or whatever. And they said, never lose the joy and enthusiasm that you get from doing these things that you couldn't imagine. And yeah, listen, there's the grind of the job where there will be like fashion weeks and stuff where it just feels like never ending. But I don't want to sit there and eye roll and be like, I can't wait to get out of here. I am so lucky to be there. I'm so lucky to interview the people I interview. I'm so lucky to be on, work on covers that I love or do Women of the Year, that if I ever get to the stage where I'm I shouldn't be in the job. I shouldn't be in the job. And I think there's definitely an enthusiasm for life or a joy that I don't think it's cool to be unbothered. I love being bothered. I just don't think
true.
It's I also think it, and I've talked about this previously a little bit, I think we live in a world that sometimes women's joy is devalued or dampened, or it can be seen as I hate this term of basic. Why is the joy that I have in, I don't know, doing a Taylor Swift Soul Cycle class on a Sunday, why is that less valuable than you supporting Aston Villa or on a Sunday? I don't know, right? So I think we do live in a world where sometimes women's joy, which can be dampened, and I just don't ever want to be that. I will go the opposite of that. And I know I'm so privileged to be in a position where I get to do ridiculous things, ridiculous things. And I get DMs from Irish girls that are in school now going, oh my God, can you send me this? Or I just want to talk to you about this. And I'm like, of course, I'd love to talk to you about whatever. And it's just such a joy to get to walk around the world and do things that you love.
Well, imagine, being from a place like Ireland and being able to look at a Sam Barry and say, as a child, boy or girl, or however you identify, I can do that.
Yeah.
I can be her. I can be that successful. That is the whole point of why we do what we do, is to show people the possibilities.
Yeah.
It's so clear you attract beauty. And I really think what you put out in the world is what you receive. And just like you said, no one should dim their light to make someone else feel better. And I think as women, and I think you do this a lot in your magazine, which you've done since you've been there, is you've really adjusted what joy looks like in fashion, what joy looks like for women, being progressive, really telling important stories that matter, even if it could be confrontational, and being vulnerable and making sure that you do right by where you're from. And it's a beautiful thing. I agree. I hope you never lose it. And with that, what's really important about this podcast, which is called Wide Open for a reason. And now that we are breaking the ice, and it's really important because I think people need to know this about stories, because it's not always perfect. It's not always joy. It's hard to get where you are. It's hard to be in a position of greatness and stay there for as long as you have. So in sports, wide open means separating yourself from the pack, seizing that moment to be open for an opportunity. Wide open in life is really being vulnerable and truthful with yourself and really sharing your scars, which I think is an important thing we all should do to help others along the way. What was the moment in your life that split you wide open, that changed everything for you?
Oh, wow. I think one that comes to mind just because is, so when I was in my late 20s, I worked in Papua New Guinea and I loved it. And it was, again, one of those things where it was like, I had worked in radio in Ireland, which I loved. And it was, and I love this like resurgence of like audio and podcasts. And I started in radio and I've always had a big love for audio and radio in general. And I took an opportunity to go to Papua New Guinea. I think I must have been 26 at the time, to work for the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. And at the time, Papua New Guinea it's a very interesting place. At the time, radio was king, right? Literacy levels aren't the best in the country. There's 800 different languages, and most people didn't have access at the time to television. And I went, and radio was king. And I was working with 16 different radio stations, and I was like loving it. And it was like a total adventure. And it was, it was such a formative, vulnerable time for me in two major ways. It changed the trajectory of my career. And it was also a place that I got like held at gunpoint and got carjacked. So there was two things that happened.
Was casual.
Yeah, that was casual. I came back to, yeah. But okay, so the first thing, it really did change the trajectory. I had worked in radio in Ireland. I'd been very excited about, like, I'd done some reporting in South America, and then I went to Papua New Guinea as a radio journalist to work with radio stations. And it was, what was it? I don't know what we're talking now, 2008, 2009 or something. And at the time I arrived, dumb phones arrived to the country at the same time. So they went from this country that was so dependent on radio, no really other big, massive ways of communicating with each other, no TVs, no landlines, and they went from radio to phones. Wow. And for me, in the 2 years that I was there, I was like working with the stations, and I was like, I was on Facebook, and I was like, let's set up Facebook pages for all of the radio stations. Because once they got a phone, they wanted to get on the internet, right? And it was, again, the era of like Digicel dumb phones, where it was rudimentary, but you were able to get online. And so the shift of what these people in this country had gone from, like, it had just jumped. So I was young, eager, excited to work. And I was like, what started as a radio job became a social media job. And I started a text message system for the whole country in radio. I put everybody on a Facebook page. We started, changing how they talk to their audience. And I remember being high up in the Highlands, and at one stage I was watching these local people coming and like putting letters outside the radio station. And I just went out and I bought a SIM card that night, and I put it into the host chair, and I said, just call out this number a couple of times, which is something I'd done in radio in Ireland. That first night we had hundreds of like text messages from people, and the local people who would, up until that time, would be writing their requests in and dropping it off at the station. So that was for me. And it led to my job. After Papua New Guinea, I was in Myanmar, Burma at the same for a couple of like on and off for 6 months with the BBC. Again, a country that was going through traumatic changes in media and landscape, going from radio straight to like the internet, right? Not in between. And what that meant, it led to my job at the CNN eventually. I ran social media there, and it was because in those worlds in Papua New Guinea and Myanmar, I saw firsthand the impact that like social could have for journalisms, for newsrooms, in a way different scale to CNN. But that's ultimately the reason why I came to CNN. It's because I was early adopter, really interested in social media. And Papua New Guinea was a place that had happened. Also a place that I got carjacked and got malaria and found myself in a vulnerable, did therapy for the first time after that. As I don't know if you know that Freud famously said that the Irish were impervious to therapy. We're the one nation that wasn't, but obviously when you go through something like that, that's the first step. But yeah, I do think at that time in B&G and I think about it now as well in my 40s. Like, I got on a plane to a place I really didn't know for a job that I had really not a lot of understanding of what it would become. And it's what we talked about earlier, is kind of holding on to that, like, let's just try something. It changed my life. That job changed my life, and it changed me as a person. And if I hadn't gone to Papua New Guinea, would I still be working in radio in Ireland? I don't know. But it definitely changed the trajectory of my career. And there was something extremely vulnerable. Like, I remember my sister was in Sydney at the time with her boyfriend, who's now the father for 3 kids. So I stopped off at Sydney before I flew to Papua New Guinea. And I remember being physically ill the morning that I was getting on the plane, because I didn't know what I was letting myself in for. I'm really glad I did it. Yeah. And it really was really vulnerable. And I wonder now, if I was given that opportunity now, would I take it? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. As like we talked about, you get a little bit more cautious or a little scared.
Yeah, but that's the whole point of it. You know, the importance here is, I think greatness stems from challenging environments. I say this as an athlete all the time. Like, I don't ever lose the title athlete. Like, I say this often because people are like, oh, retired athlete. That shit doesn't go away. Like, my mentality never goes away. And what I have found that seems to be what I call like the secret sauce of people who are exceptional at their craft is they're willing to be in uncomfortable situations. Yeah. I think that's the key, because if I'm comfortable, that's like death for me. There's nothing, like when I get comfortable, I'm like, oh fuck, something's off. Like, I need to feel that uncomfortable environment to learn, to thrive, to find new ways of belonging, acceptance, like all of these things that life gives us. I like to be challenged, and I really feel that about you too. Yeah. And I mean, you go from, this is the craziest part, and I want to talk about this because you're right. You've been in radio, you've been in journalism, you're very smart. You come in, you're working in New York, CNN during the 2016 election, which is fucking bonkers. Bless you for doing that. And then you're like, oh, I'm just going to try to be like the editor-in-chief of Glamour. What?
Yeah, it was a little bit, you know what?
Tell me, what do you mean? Like, it was, how? What? Tell me, how did that even become a possibility?
You know what was interesting? When I moved, I'd always been in newsrooms, right? Like up until Glamour, and it's a different type of newsroom, right? It's a publisher, and I really thrived in like minute of day. I'd gone from producing television for BBC World News, which was like you do an hour, you do the lunchtime show. I used to produce John Sopel's show, who I'm still such a big fan of, but that's a day job, right? Like, it's like you work on a story of the day or stories of the day, and you turn around and you've left and you close the door. Then when I was at CNN, it wasn't by the day, it was by the minute, it was by the millisecond. We built these teams that were reacting in real time to not only what we were pushing out to the world, but what we were taking in. Because I think one of the things I'd learned in Papua New Guinea and in Myanmar is that social had become such a place for us to get news and get information. And what we found, even as big of an operation as CNN was, we ended up building an amazing social news gathering team that could verify what was happening in places that we couldn't get a crew to straight away, that we had content coming in. And so I went in that world, my metabolism became like, every second, I did not sleep now for a lot of CNN. I'm not going to lie to you. I got shingles that first year. I was like,
I didn't either,
I
honey.
was like, it was a lot. And I ran social media for 4 years there, just over 4.5 years. And it was during the 2016 election, which I could not have asked for a better introduction to the world of America, because I got to see everywhere. We went to Flint, Michigan. We went everywhere, and I met every candidate. I interviewed every single one of them, and we did things that I will forever be proud of. And then I went to go to Glamour, and I remember my first couple of days and weeks, honestly, in Glamour, and being uncomfortable in a different way, because people were coming into my office and asking me who I should have on the cover in 8 months' time. And I was like, I couldn't even tell you what I want for dinner. I was so used to being, and the last year I was at CNN, I ran social media in the first year of Trump's presidency. I did not sleep. We did not sleep. That was just the reality of it. And then to go in to Glamour in this different role in a world I'd never worked in before publishing. And then I was very lucky that I had, some people with great institutional knowledge there, but they were coming into my office and they were like, who do you want in the cover in October? And I couldn't even think about using that muscle. And it took me a long time to get there, because I was so used to using the muscle that I had honed over years, which was like of the hour, of the minute.
Yes.
That was one of the biggest kind of, I think, challenges for me at Glamour, was to stop thinking with my news metabolism and start thinking like long-term strategy and what does the next year look like. That was, I would say, the biggest shift. And also was kind of quite fun in the process. Like I had started talking to Anna Wintour about the job. And there was loads of speculation in the New York media about who was going to get it. My name was never mentioned. Nobody had a clue who I was. And so I think when the announcement went out, and I remember that day so vividly, because it was a coordinated, Condé Nast were going to announce it at the same time that CNN were going to announce that I was leaving. And I was always in a 9 a.m. meeting with Jeff Zucker, who I'm a huge fan of, and I learned so much from. And then Anna was in World Trade Center, and there was just this, I'll never forget this coordinated day where I was sitting next to Jeff in the 9 a.m. and he was telling the CNN team, and Anna was down telling the Condé team, who I'm sure were doing frantic Googles of like, who is this Irish person that's coming, and going in a car, going down the West Side Highway from Columbus Circle. I remember that felt very, I don't know, it's a short car journey that I'll never forget, like leaving that like Columbus Circle building and a team that I loved, and to come down into this unknown world of Condé and a team that first of all didn't have a clue who I was, or what I was going to bring to the table. I was really confident that I was the right person for the role. I wouldn't have gone for it otherwise. Of course. But I think it took a little convincing of other people, both internally and externally.
I can imagine what that first few days, months,
I think it was probably like at least 18 months before I got anywhere near comfortable. Like it's not like, I think I was confident in what I wanted to do, but no, I think it takes a while, especially if you make that big of a change. If I'd gone into another newsroom job, I think I would have been like, okay, I can do this. Yeah. Or I'd gone somewhere, but like that change to Glamour was uncomfortable.
But it's such a like whiplash, because it is so different. Did you always love fashion? Was it always a part of your journey, your identity? Did you, as a young kid, like how do you?
I'd always loved magazines. Okay. I would say. I would say, and look, if you work at the BBC and you wear anything besides a sweater vest, you're probably the most stylish person in there. No, like it's not like you can walk around. Like I always love like fashion and style and beauty in the way that it is part of who I am, but it's not my driving identity, right? Like it's not like I love it, but it's not like, I never saw myself as like the most fashionable person. I never saw myself as the most like beauty obsessed person or whatever. What I loved about Glamour, and even in the conversation, is that it kind of encompasses a lot of just what being a woman is, right? Which is, you can enjoy these things and it doesn't need to be your main identifier. But look, I remember like, and it's so funny. Like I remember one of the first days I was in Glamour and I was doing a run through, and everybody will know a run through from like if you've watched Ever Wears Prada. Run through is like when they bring in the racks of clothes and it's picking what's going to be on the cover. Again, such a different thing for me to do. I was like, give me a news bulletin, I can do it. Is it like I was called up to the whatever floor it was, and it was a run through for the first cover where I would get to pick what was being sent in the trunks to the shoot. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And I'll tell you what happened. It was like, I literally didn't have a clue. Like, I remember just being like, oh my God, what happens here? And listen, I had a great fashion team, the stylist was in there, the photographer, the creative team. These people knew what they were doing. And I was like, okay, don't let on that you really, again, the only reference you have for a run through is Devil Wears Prada. Like, so what happened was,
this is literally, I'm living the movie as I'm like, this is fucking brilliant.
They brought in the racks of clothes. And who were we shooting? It wasn't even the cover. It was like an inside shoot for the magazine. And they were like, and it was a story and it was already been like pre-prepped before I ever walked in the thing. And I started going through the clothes and I did the only thing I knew that I would have done anywhere else in the world and any other thing. And I was like, picked something up and I said, how much is this? And their faces just went, what? I was like, how much does this cost? And they were like, I don't know. Because I knew how much Glamour women spent on. I'd done my research. I knew how much she spent on clothes. I knew what her like price point was. All of the stuff I'd done in researching for the job is like, I kind of knew who the audience were, whatever. And I did what I would have asked in a store, like, how much is this?
Exactly.
And it became this fun, almost running joke where then for the next couple of run-throughs, the Glamour team was the only team that came in with a sticky note with the price of everything on it. And so I knew, it's like, okay, let's do a mix of high and low and we're going to put $10,000 dress in. Let's put something that like they can also buy, the Glamour one can pick up. Yeah. So it became something that it was obviously talked about because it's not necessarily what people do in a run through is put the prices on them. That one of the guys who runs Frame, Eric, heard about it and he sent me presents that Christmas and there was post-it notes with the price of everything on it. And that made me laugh so much that I was like, okay, I get it. But honestly, it was a real authentic, honest moment because I could have, I didn't know what I was doing. So I asked the only question I knew what to ask, which was, how much is it?
Yeah. And that's a valid question.
Yeah.
I mean, when a person like myself who came from absolutely nothing, I couldn't even afford the magazine. So I would go into the local stands and flip through them because I loved fashion as a kid. And I would look at all of the magazines and see what people were wearing and how I could make it at home. So I
used to do the thing where we used to go to the local store and at the end of the month, the magazines they hadn't sold, they cut the cover off and throw them out. But instead of throwing them out, they'd give them to us.
Amazing.
So that was like it was like get to the end of the month, and this was like again in Ballincollig, we'd go down, we'd know the time at the end of the month, and if they've cut the cover off, it was already inventory that was gone, but we would take the magazines without the covers.
So good, and I love that part of you because you get it. And I think you've brought such a humble, valuable characteristic to the magazine because of who you are and where you come from. And I think you were the first to actually, was it keep everything under like $500 or?
Yeah, my first issue was the money issue.
Yeah.
And again, something I think women don't talk about enough. And I was really proud of the money issue being the first print issue. And in that, we'd done these run-throughs that were and so it became this thing with the fashion team. I was like, nothing in the magazine has to be more than $500. And we did a lot on like, we started a big conversation on that first issue that we continue today, which is talking to women about money and having open conversations about money. And we had it was called, can I swear?
Hell yeah.
We call it, well, this is interesting because we had this whole thing called the Fuck Off Fund. And it was a call to action to women that was really important to me where like the first thing you should always have as any person, but like it's your fuck off fund. It's like 3 to 6 months of living so you can leave a bad job, a bad lease, a bad relationship, and that's your table stakes. But I couldn't put fuck on the cover, and I remember getting told, so we called it the fallback fund or the fall up or the F off fund. But I remember having that conversation, and again going, oh, because you can't put it on the cover to put on a newsstand. But I was really proud of that, because again, it was like it felt like something, and I had people in my life that I have grown up with that I'm very close with, and that after we did that issue, we're like, I've started talking about money in a different way. I've started having a conversation about money in a different way. Like how, and even with my girlfriends, like when we negotiate or if people are in new relationships, how do they talk about money and values and all of that stuff? I was really proud of that issue. And that was, again, something that for me didn't like, you know, wasn't something I was thinking about until I was late into my 30s.
Yeah. And it's really impactful. And I think not only have you impacted it on so many layers, because I mean, print was dying when you came into the picture. Literally, like, social media became the outlet of consuming what you and I grew up with. We would go, I wanted magazines. I couldn't wait for a new magazine to come out. And I will never forget, at the end of my street, it was called Cumberland Farms. And I would go and I would look at it. I just wanted to touch it. I mean, I couldn't touch the clothing because I couldn't afford it, but like to touch the magazine and see the beauty.
What were the magazines that you?
Oh my gosh. I clearly loved Vogue.
Yeah.
Vogue was always my, and then I also really, really loved National Geographic. It was one of my, you know, I wanted to be a marine biologist as a kid. So National Geographic was always so lovely. And then anytime a new cover came out for Time, like all of these things, I love the visual. I was a creative from everything I did, how I moved mattered in the creative world. But not only was, you know, print dying, and now we're in this new digital world that you've really, I mean, that's been a big part of your legacy is that's a stressful position to be in.
That was not easy. That was
like,
not easy.
We could be here all day about that, because I can't imagine how hard that must have been, because I'm sure everyone was panicking because of social media and how we consume social media and how quickly now people were just moving through a click of a button and scrolling. But what I love so much is how you really diversified the people who you chose to put on covers and what they look like. Because it typically back in the day was very, very skinny, beautiful, blonde, tall models that no one really saw themselves when you would look at that. And I think what is so incredible about the legacy you continue to leave behind is beauty comes in all sizes. There's not a one size fits all, and you've done such a beautiful job of that. But before our time is up, because this is a really important thing I want to talk about, is the weight in which being, you know, the editor of Glamour and being able to tell the stories of people with them trusting you with very vulnerable, intimate things. Like, what is that like for you? Do you take that, like, I wouldn't sleep. Like, that is the stress I would put on myself, because I know, and I'll talk openly about this, when Sophia did the cover of Glamour, it was so raw and it was so personal and it was so real, and she was so scared and she trusted you. What does that feel like, moving through life, telling the stories of these people? And some are really hard and some are really beautiful and everything in between. How do you move through the world having that weight on your shoulders, knowing you're telling these stories and they trust you enough? Because you get one shot to do it.
Yeah. It's interesting, and you say the word trust, because that's really what it is. And for me, it's that I loved that cover, by the way, and it was a lot of conversations, and it's a really example. That Sophia cover was really vulnerable and open, but it was a safe place. And I think we live in a world where people can tell their stories anywhere. They can tell them on their own platform. They can do a Substack. They can go on, like, coming to Glamour, to a place where you're telling your story with us, is it. You are putting yourself in a vulnerable situation. We're also a publication, a news outlet. Like, we have a story to tell, and I know in that trust, like, it's also important to me that we tell the whole story, even the parts that are hard. So I think I'm very conscious that, and I think the whole team at Glamour is that people feel safe when they come to Glamour, but it's also not like we're not there to tell people's fluff piece stories. It's really about those open, vulnerable stories. And it goes back to actually when we started talking about money. I remember asking my team to start asking women on interviews, on junkets, about money in general. And we had a bachelorette contestant say, like, just really openly being like, oh, I was broke after going on that, and let me tell you what money I spent. And it opened up this whole conversation that she had with Glamour. But to your question, I feel extreme responsibility on it. And I think people are at their most vulnerable when they're really telling their story, right? When you're shooting somebody for a cover, when they're telling it in their own words or in an interview, like, that's a lot to give out to the world. And I think we all feel the responsibility of it and doing it justice. And we have at Glamour, whether it's Sophia's cover, which was like definitely our biggest cover last year, or somebody coming and telling us their abortion story, or telling us their story of failure or loss or joy, whatever it is. There is such, I think about that a lot. And I think our whole team does. When we had a meeting after the most recent election, the day after, I just said to the team, we are privileged. We are more privileged than a lot of people in the world. We have a platform, and we can use it in a way that works for our audience and tell stories for women. So I'm thinking about this now because I watched so much Spider-Man with my nephews over Christmas. But like, the thing, like, with great power comes great responsibility. I do feel that about this Glamour job. I feel that when I'm talking about something so personal and sensitive, about somebody coming and really telling their story to us. So yeah, I've got Spider-Man in my head now. But with great power comes great responsibility.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
And I went to the Glamour of the Year this year, and it was so magical, and it was so powerful, and highlighting the mothers who have really paved the way for a lot of these young women to be groundbreaking musicians, actors, activists, feminists, this year I sobbed. Well, it was 2024. I fucking sobbed the whole time. Yeah. I did. And
I was trying to make people laugh this year, though. Did you? There was supposed to be joy in it too.
There was. I laughed my ass off on a few parts, like especially the singing comedy.
Oh my God, loved. They were so good.
It was so good. But with that, I looked over and I saw you sitting at the table with Beyonce.
My best friend Beyonce? No,
yeah.
No.
But
I was like bopping with Beyonce.
Yeah, I mean, what the fuck,
I know.
Sam? Like, this is your life.
I was like, that is, yeah. There was like, I had this moment, because we didn't know until she sat down that she was sitting down. Like, I had done the cover of the moms, and I was so excited to talk to these mothers, and we obviously invited them and all their families, but like, we had no idea. Honestly, I got off the stage at the start, sat down, and there was an empty seat next to me, and I was texting Monique, who works on my team, and I was like, why are there empty seats next to me? And then trying to be all calm and just like keep it together. And then this just vision of Beyonce comes in the back, sits down next to me. And all I'm thinking, I was like, oh my God, I got to be cool. But like, somebody's got to be taking a photo of this. I need a video of this. And at one stage, she like grabbed my hand while her mom was on stage, and we did a little pop. And I was like, this is just a bit. Like, that's.
How do you.
That is like when we talk about like these moments of like just sheer, like, how is this my life? Like, It was so lovely and so joyful, and I'm bopping with Beyonce at a thing that I'm hosting that is having people sob and like laughter, but really it's all about celebrating women. I'm like, what is this life? Like, it's just amazing.
It was it was really beautiful to see as a person who has a very small piece of witnessing your excellence and what you've done over your career. And I consider you such a dear friend. You're so kind and genuine. But when I looked at Soph and I was like, look at her. Like, because I'm proud too. Like you still are this like humble, fucking goofy, showing up in Santa Claus outfits with your nieces and nephews. You told me you have a heart out because you have to go meet with Anna Wintour, but you're still this like fucking fun, goofy chick who sits next to Beyonce, and God knows you're still the same you, Sam. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think what the stories you tell and how impactful this journey has been, I'm just lucky to be I get to witness it. And
you're going to make me cry now.
I'm
You're
sorry,
going to, Diane Sawyer, you're going to make me cry in this interview.
It is really special, and it's so beautiful to see, because so many people in your position, they change with the job. They do. They have to create this image of, beauty and grace and chic and stoic, and it's just fucking not you, but you do it all. No. It's like so weird. It's so cool. And we still laugh about stupid shit, even though you're sitting next to Beyonce and doing stuff with Michelle Obama and like writing these beautiful pieces that are really changing the landscape of our culture. And I'm just lucky to call you a friend.
Oh, me too. And also, I love at the end of the night, my favorite thing was we were in the elevator in the lift and we were like, where's the food? We got to find the food. And like, we'd had the best night. And then you and me, we found ourselves. So my best friend was there in the lift, just like going, we need to go get food. We need some burgers right now.
I love it. And I'm so grateful that you even take the time to come and sit here and talk about yourself, because you have an incredible story, and I think people only see a certain side of you. And I appreciate you being so vulnerable and wide open, and thank you for being here today.
Such a joy.
And I can't wait to continue to follow your journey. I can't wait for more date nights out in the city.
It gets a bit warmer.
I know, it's brutal here right now. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much, Anna. I really appreciate it. I could have talked to you for hours.
Oh, yeah, I know. Too bad you have a meeting with Anna. Sorry if I'm, small on that scale, but I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And good luck in this new role. I know you're going to do incredible things. Everyone, follow her on Instagram. She is great.
Santa suits.
Santa suits. It is actually LOL and funny. I'm watching all the time. But do you have anything to share with everyone that's up and coming? Are you working on any fun projects you want to talk about?
I would say there's one thing in my new global role, UK Glamour is a big part of it. And we just had an amazing win yesterday. And so basically, they've been campaigning for to criminalize deepfakes, which has been a really important thing. They've gone to number 10. They've held roundtables at Parliament, and the UK government have just announced that they will be criminalising the use of deepfakes, which we know are used predominantly against women.
Yes.
So that's a win in the campaign. I think my kind of slogan for Glamour this year is ready to fight, but powered by joy. So you're going to see a lot of like fun content. I think we're in a place this year that people want fun content. And again, Glamour's, it's got both, right? We're ready to fight for the criminalization of deepfakes in the UK or paid leave and abortion in America, but we're also going to serve up some fun WAG content, WAG week. Or
oh my God, the WAG. We got so much. Like, our friends were dying from that. I love, because I'm always like, oh, Sophia's girlfriend. And then she got thrown as a WAG. Yes. And I was like, how's it feel, girl? So it was good.
Lots of joy.
Lots of joy. 2025, we have a lot to celebrate.
Yeah.
And as hard as it might feel with the political climate for a lot of women, we have to be in the moment and present and grateful for the things that we have, and we stick together. We're used to rolling our sleeves up, honey.
Exactly.
This is all we know.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks so much
coming.
for having me. Thank you.
Love you, babe.